My name is Truus Daalder. With my husband Joost, I live in Adelaide. We got our degrees in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, so we're of Dutch background. From there we moved to New Zealand and lived there for 10 years, and then we came to Australia, so we've spent the largest part of our lives here in Australia, in Adelaide. From the beginning of our collecting, certainly our taste has changed dramatically. While we were in New Zealand, we were not particularly interested in tribal cultures, and we did not collect any of these pieces. So we had Victorian and Georgian pieces of all kinds. But as we came to this country, we became far more interested in tribal pieces, but also in modern pieces and modern ceramics, modern jewelry, and that has become a major collecting interest since then. So you still find your taste changing because we now also go back perhaps more to older European things than we had done for quite some time. So one's taste is not set for life.
My name is Joost Daalder. My wife Truus and I are intensely interested in the visual arts and collect a number of different objects in different areas, notably perhaps most of all jewelry, but also sculpture, ceramics. We haven't ever had any specific collecting program in mind. Everything that we have collected because of our interests in what we saw, and those interests have developed, one could say, dynamically over time. So there's no underlying program. It really largely depends on what we happen to come across, and we tend to act, I think, more than anything else on gut feeling. As to that's a condition, I feel. It has to be something that we are first and last greatly attracted to and interested by, and that could be with any kind of object.
Our collecting had taken place largely in the major cities of the world, and I think that that's almost inevitable now because the better pieces have been taken to the West. It started with missionaries in the 19th century, and collectors have done the same. So the most important pieces are generally in the West. And we have not visited any of these exotic places. The only place where we really bought in situ was in Morocco and Istanbul to some extent, but it's not really easy. You have to be very persistent to get to be shown the old pieces, because they don't really want to sell those. The research I did was very much when we retired on the pieces and on the cultures.
Amongst the pieces of jewelry that we have, one that I'm emotionally attached to, as well as greatly liking it, is a piece by René Lalique, probably the best-known French jeweler of all times and one of the best-known jewelers, full stop. Well, he's generally held to have created fantastic jewelry, and has done. But for the smaller purse, one might say, of course the possibilities are restricted. However, I inherited some money from my mother, which was really too small to, let us say, to invest, so to speak. But nevertheless, just enough to buy some very attractive pieces of jewelry. And decided to buy 2 pieces of jewelry of a kind that we would not normally have bought. So that's how we came to buy a piece by Lalique, who already at the time, this was 1994, it's quite an expensive proposition. The piece that we have is relatively modest, but it is not without considerable interest. It in particular has got a pleasant sort of flaming feel to it, as though light radiates from within the piece outward. That's one thing that I like about it very much.
The wearability is, I think, to me, is not particularly important. Well, very many ethnic pieces are extremely heavy. Brides were often loaded up with 15 kilos of jewelry, which would not suit me. But when you collect, it's because you're interested in the piece and not particularly in the wearability. On the other hand, it's nice if you can wear it, but that is modern and contemporary jewelry is often easier to wear.
I tend to favor sometimes pieces of jewelry as art that far fewer women respond to than I would have thought, because the object is so beautiful, but they don't identify with it as wearable. That's, I think, for most women a terribly important factor, whether it is actually wearable or not. To me, that's of absolutely no concern. So I regard it as a very important art form, greatly underrated as an art form, in certain cases still greatly underpriced as an art form.
Although there is an enormous variety between the communities where ethnic pieces are worn, that general factors underlie this in the use of them, and love, death are very important aspects of the wearing of jewelry. But another important one, tribally, is fear. And amulets are worn in many, many parts of the world for different reasons, to keep ancestor spirits happy or away, or all sorts of misfortune which can befall people. So you wear an amulet to keep yourself safe.
What we go for, I think, in contemporary jewelry is always, well, beauty, I think, above anything else. Though we may occasionally collect something that's perhaps not beautiful, but very striking and very expressive. That factor, the inventiveness and the individualistic quality of much contemporary jewelry made by art jewelers, is what for me, and I think for both of us, stands out as one good reason for collecting it. If you collect even ethnic jewelry, you'll be able to find an awful lot of pieces of jewelry that are very different from what you find, well, mostly in the West. Most ethnic jewelry that is available tends to be from the East of the world. But you will nevertheless come to a degree of repetitiveness if you collect it for long. And it is usually done according to tradition. Contemporary jewelers tend to abandon all notions of tradition and to find imaginative forms completely of their own. So you don't know what you're going to see, and their imagination is often wonderful, and they have the skills to implement what they see in their minds. Imagine that's how it works, or it grows under their hands imaginatively. I don't know how they do it, it probably varies. But they are very inventive, and it's a most exciting subject area to collect, which I think in Australia peculiarly is practiced very well as an art form, both collected by Australians, far too little.
We don't normally commission pieces, but just not long ago we commissioned one from a Dutch artist, Jacomen van der Donk, who had sold a similar piece to the Museum of Decorative Arts in Paris. And we thought it was so exceptional that we would like to have one like it. She was quite willing to make it again, except that she said it will be a bit different. It won't be quite the same. And in fact, we think that ours is superior. It's more playful. It's more the loving aspect, although it still retains the menacing aspect of having hands around the neck, which gives a throttling effect. So she made that specially for us, and it looks a bit like lace, it's black, which is sinister, but at the same time the lace gives it a sort of gentleness, so it is a very ambivalent piece.
All in all, if someone were to ask me, why do you, as a man in a couple, so strongly feel moved to buy jewelry along with your wife? It's not a matter of indulging any whim on the part of my wife. It's really a matter of being as keen, well, I could say probably as keen as anyone on jewelry of various kinds. I'm quite besotted with it. And as I think said before, it could be of any period, could be from any culture in principle, so long as the jewelry speaks to me. And it's a beautiful object.
It's fortunate that Joost and I seem to agree most of the time on what we want to collect. It's rare for us to have a real disagreement. We may prefer certain things, the one may prefer certain things and the other may prefer other things, but mostly we come to a pretty good agreement, and that makes collecting much more enjoyable, and because you can discuss the pieces and you can do the research together, and you can live with them much more than if it was just the one person who did this.